All right, good morning. John Marks here. It's Wednesday, November 5th, and we're here with Senator Mays Middleton. He is running for Attorney General. And with me is Larry Rogers, Bob Bagley, Kenneth Ernest, Luis Pedraza, and Lana Horde. Good morning and welcome.
Morning.
As we talked about a little bit earlier, if you want to take up to 5 minutes for your opening, and then we'll go around the table with Q&A and then finish it up.
Perfect.
With a closing from you, and then we'll go from there.
Excellent. Hey,
Thanks for
thank you
coming.
for having me, John and
bet.
Bob and Lon and everyone else. So, Mays Middleton, state senator now, running for attorney general, and this is a calling, not a job for me. And look, from day one, like our president, I give away the salary. I don't take the pension. I don't take the health care. I don't take the state license plate. I don't take any of the lobbyist NFL tickets or lobbyist ski trips. None of that. I'm only here to serve and fight for the conservative values that we believe in. And from day one, I was a grassroots activist, just like everyone here at this table. That's how I got started. I was on the board of Texas Public Policy Foundation before I got elected to Texas House. And I had an incumbent state representative that was not living up to his conservative promises. And I decided to do something about it myself. I knocked on 6,000 doors, beat him in the primary. And then once I got elected to the House, I was chairman of the Texas House Freedom Caucus. And of course, when I ran for Senate, President Trump said my conservative record was second to none. But from day one in office, day one, I've always been ranked as the top one or two most conservative members in the House, top one or two most conservative members in the Texas Senate. And what this really is at the end of the day, this is a show me, don't tell me business. And I can show you the results. I'm the only one in this attorney general's race that's been protested at the Texas Capitol. They had these green signs, the drag queens and a bunch of men in women's dresses, with my face on it, X's through my eyes, and they called me the bathroom bigot. Well, why do they do that? Because I don't want a man in my little girl's restroom or locker room or shower. And the reason why they're protesting me and not others is because I'm already beating the left. I'm already defeating them. They know who their true enemy is. They know who's defeating the woke mind virus, and that's me. And look, the list goes on. I fought the woke left's radical gender ideology, won, authored and passed the Save Women's Sports Act, authored and sponsored the What is a Woman Act, which is President Trump's executive order on what is a woman, right? I mean, so that's very simple. These are basic biological truths, but these are also basic biblical truths. And I am not bending to their delusions. And that's what they are, delusions. This transgender ideology is a mental illness. And they're coming after our kids with it. And we cannot relent in that fight. And they have threatened my life over this. And I'm not bending, I'm not yielding. We cannot allow people like that to determine the direction of the state or of this nation. And that's why this session, I authored and passed the strongest Women's Privacy Act in America. It's $125,000 per day fine. It's stronger than any other states. I want to make sure of that. I actually worked with Steve Toth on that. He and I worked together to strengthen that bill. But look, also fought to make sure we're putting America first. Authored and joint authored the bill to stop China from buying our land and stop our foreign adversaries from buying our land. I fought the atheists and won, and authored and passed the bill to put prayer back into our public schools and the Ten Commandments back on the wall of every class. Children need to learn about God's law. Also fought to triple border security and designate cartels as terrorist organizations. And look, from day one, this has been fighting to put our state first and put our values first. And I've taken on the woke corporate interest as well that are trying to drag Texas down like the other states. I actually fought the woke soda lobby and won. And authored and passed the bill to kick soda and candy out of our food stamp program. And the vaccine lobby took them on and won. And authored and passed the strongest COVID vaccine mandate ban in America. Strongest one, 5 times stronger than Florida's. So I have that proven record. This is a show me, don't tell me business. And I can show you the results where I've moved the ball down the field, not just defeated the left, not just stopped bad bills from passing, but actually advanced our agenda. our conservative agenda, because that's really what matters. That's how we save Texas. That's how we save America.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the overview.
Thank you.
So in the first question, of course, why you're running for office, you kind of match up to our core values: Christian, conservative, and Republican. I don't know. I might have been taking the ski tickets, but just kidding.
Well, most so I'll tell you, most do I always say this: the most dangerous person in Austin is someone that wants to be liked and loved by their fellow politicians and the lobbyists.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's federally and statewide.
On every level, you
Yeah,
know.
and every level, the local too as well. So you had mentioned that you want to put in place an anti-corruption division, and can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Is there anything like that General Paxton had put in place that you can build on, or is this going to be from scratch and go from there?
Well, it's not necessarily organized, you know, and that's the thing. So reverse engineering some of this, where uh, grassroots guy, you know, I hear all the time. You know, we're right next to Harris County right here. Um, Lena Hidalgo, for example, you know, Lena Hidalgo, for example,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, look at her staff. We know she was involved. I mean, this is politicians profiting off their position.
Mhm.
George Soros politicians. And, you know, it is taxpayer money. Government doesn't have any money. I'm sick and tired of that. And a lot of that, you know, of course, is driven by George Soros, which is why on day one, I want to investigate George Soros in that division and any corruption division. And not only that, I want to move the open records division to that anti-corruption division, because we've all had issues with open records. And one of the reasons for that is these crooked taxpayer-funded lobbyists are training local government in how to avoid disclosure. We've paid for these documents. They belong to taxpayers. And literally, they're being hidden. How do you shine the light on something when you can't even see it, right? When you can't even get these documents. And so that's right out of the gate. Step one to exposing waste, fraud, and abuse is getting a hold of these open records. And I love cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, but I also want to hold those accountable who have committed the waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's why I want to start that anti-corruption division.
Okay. Well,
I'm going to use the mic because last night we didn't get great recordings on some of the questions. You talk about the what you're going to be doing to get the rogue DAs under control in Texas counties, the ones who fail to either post no bail for felony crimes and just letting people go. The rogue counties are making all of us unsafe. And can you elaborate on what exactly you're going to do, what practical steps you're going to take to get those counties under control and get those DAs back to enforcing the law?
Right. So obviously these are DAs that are elected with George Soros's dollars, right? And you're seeing the spillover right here in Montgomery County, because we know the Harris County DA, Sean Tier, got elected with George Soros money. And here's why this is so important. Our laws and our Constitution are not suggestions. This is not cafeteria style. You don't get to pick and choose. Because when you do that, you've violated the separation of powers. You've merged the legislative, judicial, and the executive, because you were unilaterally as a DA deciding what is law and what is not. No, it doesn't work that way. Remember Johnny Holmes? That's how a DA is supposed to work. And by the way, they should pledge to support the death penalty and all capital offenses. That's another reason they should be removed from office. If they are never seeking the death penalty, I believe they violated their oath of office, because those are capital offenses that are happening. And these are families that are being killed, children. But here's one way you do that. You continue to collect that data. General Paxton is doing that right now. And then once that happens, there's a petition for removal. So I think the plan is actually package that together. A petition for removal is filed. We changed the law last session. And what that does is it goes to presiding judge of the administrative judicial region. And then there's a prosecuting attorney appointed. But there's nothing in the law that prohibits the DA from appointing the AG as the prosecuting attorney to oversee the removal trial. So it doesn't prohibit that. And that is something I want to use in the AG's office to remove these rogue DAs, because, you know, you got a good old boy system a lot of the time, and you got to have accountability. and they violated their oath of office. When you put your hand on the Bible to protect and defend the laws and Constitution, it means all of our laws and all of the Constitution. And they're compromising the safety of our families and our communities by not doing that.
All right. Louis?
So election integrity is more where I think if we had election integrity, we'd really have a different country, and Texas even.
Yeah.
So you had two questions here, but the one is you're going to create a task force for election integrity division, and then on the other one, election audit. So where are you at though? They kind of locked Paxton out right now out of prosecuting. Would you go back to the courts and try to get that reversed, or what's the process that you have for that? Because we really gotta. Do you want to prosecute election fraud?
Absolutely. Look, I'm the only one in this AG's race that identified that gap that the Court of Criminal Appeals took away. And so I asked Governor Abbott in the special sessions, I put it out in June, please add to the call the ability of the AG to prosecute, because changing it in the law is the strongest way, right? Because the court could always flip on you. We want that too. We want the votes on the Court of Criminal Appeals, but the right way to do it, of course, is in legislation, where it is state law. So I asked Governor Abbott to do that. He did it. We passed it in the Senate, passed in the House. Now it is going to be law in December, but now we need to take the second step. Where we have a very small election integrity division, we need to create a standalone election integrity division with law enforcement powers in the AG's office to be able to prosecute violations of election law with rapid deployment. Because, I mean, when they're stealing, they're not raising their hand and saying, oh, look, over here's 1,000 votes we just threw into that mailbox. No, they don't do that. It's fraud. It's hard to identify. And you need that rapid response and help from the AG's office. And that's why I want to start that standalone division in the AG's office to enforce our election laws. Because look, one illegal vote cancels out your legal vote. That's why this is so important. We can run all the conservatives we want, but if they're stealing, what good is it going to do? I mean, you saw it in Harris County. It wasn't in 22. It wasn't voter fraud. It wasn't election fraud. It was voter suppression. They literally denied ballot paper to Republican precincts.
So would you go back to the courts at all, or you just think the law will?
We need to change that too. Okay. We need the votes in the Court of Criminal Appeals. Of course, it will probably be challenged. So that's another thing. That's right. You know, you got to have the votes there to back us up in the state law again. But anyway, the most important thing was that we changed the law and restored that ability of the AG to prosecute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Don Huffines is running for comptroller. We have already talked to Don, and hopefully, when he takes office, he's going to do a whole doge starting within his department and then take it throughout the state all of the departments within the state of Texas. As the AG, how could you support that? Would you support that? And what would that look like to support a full doge of the state of Texas?
Absolutely. We actually have a state auditor's office. It's a waste, fraud, and abuse reporting portal, but very little is done with it right now. So we need to start from the ground up. I'll tell you one other thing that I want to do, and I actually filed legislation this session to do it. It's a lot like President Trump proposed on the federal level, is why are all our state agencies in Austin? Why are they headquartered there? That is the most expensive real estate, the highest cost, the most liberal county in Texas. You know, we could save money and have better ideology if we distribute those around the state. That's one thing I want to do in the AG's office, but we need to do it on the state level as well. It's also a way to, cull the number of employees because they're not moving. Like, for example, if you're moving it from, to Montgomery County, from Travis County, they're probably 80% that won't do that. They won't move. So it's also a chance to, I think, get a better ideology that's more responsive to those who are paying for state government, which is the taxpayer.
But could the AG help the comptroller with the weight of the office behind them? Is there anything that the office could do to help push it through, or do you just feel like the comptroller could push this through on her own? I guess is what I'm asking.
The anti-corruption division would fit perfectly with just that, with the DOJ agenda. Now, we may need additional tools in the AG's office. And look, you do have to go to the legislature as Attorney General and ask for those. Well, I'm best equipped to do that. I've got over 51 Trump-endorsed legislators behind me. All three of my opponents combined have two. That's it. Who's going to be able to get things done? I am. And you have to. Look, your budget goes through the Texas House and the Texas Senate. You got to get these things done. You can't just talk about it. You have to deliver on it. And I'm best equipped to do that.
All right. Well, so this wasn't brought up, but I have another suggestion for your corruption division, and that's looking into civil asset forfeiture. That people are getting robbed of their livelihood and everything they own without having an actual conviction in the state. And the money's divvied up between the counties, the cities, and the state. Your thoughts?
Well, I'd be happy to look at that. Due process is incredibly important, and we've seen a lot of examples where that's not actually happening. Obviously, that was something that happened in the impeachment of our current Attorney General. There was no due process in that. So it's incredibly important to me. We need to make sure that that's private property, by the way. That's private property. So we need to make sure if that's going to happen, if there's going to be civil asset forfeiture, we've got to be every I dotted, every T crossed, and that your constitutional rights to private property are not violated. Because look, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. And that Constitution guarantees us life, liberty, and property. Right? Those are our God-granted freedoms. But it's up to us to protect and defend them. Right? And so that is near and dear to my heart. That's what I believe in, and that's my faith that drives that, where we are a Christian nation too, by the way. That's not said often enough. People aren't bold in that, and I don't know why, honestly. Because we saw after Charlie Kirk's assassination, we're in a great revival right now, but it's up to us to make sure that we put it into action, those biblical values into action. And part of that, of course, is your right to private property.
So you'd be willing to include this?
Yeah, so that includes everything. The anti-corruption division is all levels.
It's wide throughout
It's
the states.
it's all levels of government. It doesn't matter if it's local or state, all levels, right? Because this is something we've all had to fight head on. We've seen it. It's not just Harris County. It's a statewide issue. I mean, how many times have people come to us if something happened? Someone called me this morning about a school district up in Plano. It's just persistent, right? They were using bond money for something that the bond wasn't passed for. That's waste, fraud, and abuse. That's what that is.
Welcome to Montgomery.
Y'all have had issues with that. Yeah, I know.
One of our questions was, what can the Attorney General do to, or have you done to end the practice of sanctuary cities in Texas? And you said that you authorized and passed House Bill number 2715. This bill makes it easier to remove local elected officials from office for incumbency, office misconduct, and intoxication. When you say it's easier to remove local elected officials, what about state? Does that include the state officials?
Well, so the ban on sanctuary cities is universal. So that's SB 4, and that was a Freedom Caucus priority, by the way. Matt Schaefer offered the amendment. He was my predecessor as Freedom Caucus chair, and it is the strongest in America. So that's not that bill, but what SB 4 does is it authorizes me to enforce the ban on sanctuary cities through civil penalties, criminal penalties, and removal from office. So, that is a hammer right there, number 3 especially. That's my favorite part of that bill. That was the hardest to get done, by the way, because we know it. Yeah, exactly. And look, this is going to be real here. We just passed SB 8, which is the ICE detainer program. Did you know we only had 35 or 36 of 254 counties in that? Meaning only 36 counties had signed agreements with ICE to hold criminal illegal immigrants in their jail for deportation, to turn them over. That's wrong, and we changed the law. So now on January 1st, every county in Texas has to sign those ICE detainer programs. But what that means is for some of these big blue counties that don't do that or get in the way, they're violating the ban on sanctuary cities. And that bill right there, 2715, goes way farther than that. So in other words, when you see, say, a city council person saying, well, we're not going to turn over the flock cameras because that might get turned over to ICE. Or Adrian Garcia said the other day that he wants to not cooperate with ICE. That's the definition of incompetence to me. because you know what the law is. He knows who's sheriff. He knows what the law is, and he's willfully not following. So that makes you eligible for removal from office under that bill. And another reason why that bill is so important, 2715 that I passed, is before it went to a George Soros district judge, right? So say Harris County removal goes to George Soros, that's not going to happen. That's not meaningful. We know they're not going to do anything. Now it goes to the Republican presiding judge of the administrative judicial region, and they assign it to a nearby court, a nearby jury, a nearby prosecuting attorney. So there's real accountability now.
Okay. By the way, if this goes off while you're
That means
answering, go ahead and
stop.
finish your thought.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's
Can I
okay.
add on to that one real quick? So you're capable of removing them from office, but is it practical? Is it gonna actually happen? Can it happen? And how hard is it gonna be? I mean,
Well, so we just changed the law. This just went into effect, 2715.
Right.
The ban on sanctuary cities really, didn't have much of an effect when Biden was president because you turn them over to ICE, then what? Border Patrol let them go, or it was catch and release. It didn't mean much. It does now because President Trump is a champion for border security. And look, we need to use every resource and tool available in the AG's office to back him up and make sure that we implement that deportation agenda at every level of government, every level. And I've got zero tolerance for those that are in the way. And the AG's office has the tools to enforce that and make sure there's zero tolerance and accountability in it. But on this one, that's why we changed it to a nearby county, because before it just went to either a home field advantage or George Soros district judge, right? I mean, that's not, it's like, did we really think a George Soros DA is going to prosecute voter fraud? No, of course not, right? I mean, everybody knows this. It's common sense, right? A lot of this is just pure common sense. So this is about to be tested. There are a number of activists around the state that are about to file some petitions for removal for incompetency. And I think they'll get a fair shake. Like, for example, what if Lena Hidalgo was in a removal trial in Galveston County? That's a 65% Trump voting county. And they got some really tough district judges there that are tough on crime, which we need to be. Law and order is America first. The end. So it's brand new. If it needs to be changed, I'm the best equipped to go work with the legislature to do that. It may need to be. Things always, they're not perfect, that's for sure. And we need more tools like on the DA removal. I want DAs to be disbarred that are removed. I don't want to see them back in the courthouse. Because you got the Marion Barry example where he was thrown in jail for crack cocaine and prostitution, got out, got reelected. I can see that happening actually in Travis County.
yeah.
I think we can all see that happening there. So the disbarment makes him disqualified from ever serving again in any capacity in the courthouse. That's what I want to see happen. That second step.
Okay, give me a second. Running this clock is challenging in itself. Okay, in the questionnaire, what are the three biggest problems for the citizens of Texas that your office will address? Let's see. The top one that you had was Islamification of Texas, and the radical left's woke ideology, and then selective following the law. So let's talk about Islam. Basically, I think we're all aware that it's incompatible with Western civilization from that standpoint. What happened with this community up near Dallas and Epic? I guess it was east of Plano.
Yeah.
How did that get established? Have they fully implemented Sharia law? And where does that stand? What has the legislature, what specifically did you do to combat that?
Right. So that's American law, American courts. Epic was authorized by local government, unfortunately. Yeah, I know. That's disappointing, isn't it? Because look, Islam is a threat to our Constitution. Radical Islamic terrorism is something we knew was going to be a problem. Joe Biden gave a country away to them, the Taliban, Afghanistan. He gave a country. And then what did he do right after that? He opened the border. So two things we passed this session that I fought for. Number one, transnational repression. We make it a crime to enforce Sharia law in Texas, a crime. That needs to be enforced. So for example, if you have a DA that's not doing that, they need to be removed from office.
So that is a law.
That's the
right?
law. Additionally, SB 17 we passed this session. That's the bill that stops China from buying our land, but also there's something else very important there. We can designate entities as enemies to Texas and to America. And I believe the Muslim Brotherhood is exactly that. And so I will fight to make sure that every one of these entities, these radical Sharia law, Islamification groups that are not governments, but are entities that are trying to implement Sharia law in Texas, need to be designated as such. And you know who has the power to hold them accountable? The AG does. This office can sue to force them to divest. In other words, all the property that they own, they have to sell. And I love what they did in Missouri, by the way. So they sued China, right, for what they did during COVID. They got a recovery. And in order to satisfy that recovery, they're forcing them or planning to force them to divest their property in Missouri. It's a great tool. Not only that, the other bill that dealt with the way Epic was organized, it's really a corporation. They knew they couldn't get away with deed restrictions. So what they did is they basically did like a mock Sharia law in their corporate bylaws. You're buying shares. And so this creates a cause of action, one of the laws we passed this session in the legislature. And that cause of action needs to be enforced by the Attorney General as well. So when they're trying to get a runaround on that, American law, American courts, or ban on Sharia law, they're trying to do it through their corporate bylaws and their corporate organization and do like basically a de facto Sharia law. And that was what Epic was up to in Collin County.
So real quick, does that just apply to purchases or is this leasing? Because I know
It's
all of it?
it's real property. It's real property, but then you got to remember, it's American law, American courts. Sharia law is illegal. Also, we passed the law to create a cause of action to stop those Sharia law havens from going into effect. That was Candy Noble's bill this session. It was tough to get done. We got it done. And that was a big priority of mine. Fought for that. So we have real tools to deal with that. I'm not saying we won't need additional tools because I want to start an anti-organized crime and anti-cartel division in the AG's office. And to me, radical Islamic terrorism is organized crime. So that is what I will investigate under that anti-organized crime division in Texas. So a lot of tools. We need every tool on the table to combat this. That's the bottom line.
Right.
We can't just focus on looking at our feet, right? I mean, this is a threat to our republic here.
One of our questions was, I have two questions about contracts. I'm just going to mash them together. One of our questions was, would you initiate proceedings against local officials who issue no bid contracts or divert tax dollars to themselves or friends? And your answer was an unequivocal yes, I will initiate
Yes.
proceedings. And in that vein of contracts that need to be enforced based on ethical ideas, address what you can do there and what you will do, as well as how can we keep our state contracts from continuing to go to companies that refuse to use E-Verify? What can we do to make that no longer economically viable for them to continue to do that?
So we did change the law several years ago that requires, citizen employment for state contracts. However, the E-Verify law did not pass this session. I was a joint author on that bill. Lois Colforth carried it. I was one of the first to champion that. In the Senate, we passed it actually out of committee twice. My first session in the Senate and my second. And unfortunately, the bill didn't pass the House, right? So we need to make sure we're enforcing that because at the end of the day, that's one of the magnets we're talking about. We want to stop illegal immigration. Trump is doing a great job at doing that, but we've got to cut off the magnets to it. But on the contract side of it, I've been challenging taxpayer-funded lobbyists over this for years. That's the toughest fight in Austin because they're spending $100 million a year of our tax dollars to lobby against us, and that's one of the things they're lobbying against. Is they got politicians profiting off their position. They're not following our conflicts of interest disclosures. Those are the law right now, and they're not following that, and we know it. They're benefiting off these contracts, and the no bid contracts, they're actually the worst offenders. So TASB, which does the risk pool insurance for school districts, that's single bid, no bid. They don't bid that out usually. I mean, they're as guilty as anyone of it, and it's wrong. It's unethical. From day one, I've taken that on, and that is why I am so hated on Congress Avenue in Austin, because I'm the only one willing to take on how the swamp is fed with our tax dollars. This is the deep state. This is the USAID of Texas. They don't even want the light on this, right? So for 4 sessions in a row, I've tried to expand, right, those conflicts of interest where like third degree of consanguinity. If your uncle's getting the school bus contract, you should disclose that. If you're a beneficiary of a trust, like for an airport concession contract, which we know some people are, you should disclose that. If you're a subcontractor, you should disclose that. Because right now, okay, if you're the contractor, sure, they disclose. If you're the sub, they don't. That's the loophole around this. And I'm sick and tired of it. And at the end of the day, we got too many people running for office that are in it for themselves. And that's what I'm fighting to stop from day one in
And
office.
you don't take a salary or?
I give away my salary. I don't take anything, nothing from the government.
All right, just to confirm. Luis?
Actually, it's not on here, but information requests, I agree. I've submitted a whole bunch of them. Attorney-client privilege is what they always hit me with. I wanted a document that would explain how the bond was calculated for Conroe ISD and all the details. They gave us an overall PFD or just an overall number, but I wanted the details on how to and what assumptions were made, and they wouldn't give it to me. I went information request. 6 months later, I got no attorney-client privilege. I really hate that, and I've submitted many of them on the same issue most of the times. So I like the idea of trying to do something about that because it would be great to actually submit an information request and get the information. That would be a novel thing.
Well, I want to rebuild that division from the ground up because look, it's the taxpayer funded lobbyists that are training. For example, TML, Texas Municipal League. We found out that they were actually saying, hey, copy the city attorney on every email and you can claim attorney-client. Well, that's a scam to prevent us from getting documents. I went through this in Kima. Even I had a difficult time as a state senator getting a hold of documents from Kima. And it was some reports that were very damaging, of course, to the city that they didn't want to turn over. Everyone's got a story like this because when you turn on the lights, the roaches run away. That's why transparency is so important. And how are we going to, again, identify the waste, fraud, and abuse if we can't get the documents to prove it? I mean, that's step one in this process. Number one out of the gate is that. And I'm sick of it again and again and again. I fought to hold, local government accountable for concealing these records. And the presumption should be like a criminal trial. It should be beyond a reasonable doubt is the only way that you could withhold something from somebody, right? The reverse. The presumption should be always open to the public, always transparent, always available, unless it's, truly an active law enforcement investigation or there's some sort of litigation where, it would hurt taxpayers. You just can't do that. Very limited, very limited. And now it's become the de facto, we're not turning it over. No is the first answer to everything. And that's wrong.
Okay. So I do like that. I hope that something happens.
Yeah. That's a huge priority of mine. So.
Okay, Ken?
To kind of add on, I changed my question based on the two before. So locally here, our commissioners, if you look at the Ethics Commission report of where they get their money, a lot of it comes from engineering firms and a lot of it comes from developers. Well, first thing to say is that when they do their Ethics Commission report, it's not required. I know that would have to come through the legislature, I believe, but they don't put down that they got $5,000. It says Joe Smith, but it doesn't say that they're with a development company and this guy's the senior vice president. So they don't disclose that. But I guess my bigger question is, there's got to be, because so if you do correlation between who gives these people money and then who gets the contracts, because those are no bid because the engineering is not low bid. It's based on qualifications.
Right.
So how do you get qualified? Oh, well, maybe it's how you give a donation to their campaign. So I don't know. My point is that there's just so much good old boy stuff. And I know it's got to be in all of the counties, but we see it here in Montgomery County. When you get in as AG, what can we do or what can the AG do to fight that? It's just so frustrating.
Well, number one is enforce the law, but look, I've also been fighting this in the legislature as well. So, single bid, no bid is a huge problem. But I think anyone that's doing that, they're lobbying, and they should have to register the lobby. They don't right now. Those vendors don't have to. So we don't know. Taxpayers have no clue. They should have to register to lobby because that is what they're doing. They're lobbying for tax dollars. But this is an even bigger problem even than with our school districts because TASB has a stranglehold on this. And what'll happen is they'll get them into their conference. Oh, here's our bond underwriter. Oh, here's the architect. Here's the contractor. Uh, Also, here's who can help you sell the bond. And I think that anyone, frankly, that donates to pass the bond, if you're a contractor, you should be disqualified from getting the contract.
Great idea.
You should be disqualified. It's not right. That's what's happening right now. You go look at the bond pack. Who pays for it? The contractors do. And who is that taking advantage of? Us, taxpayers. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at the end of the day, and it's all driven out of the TASB cartel because those are their preferred vendors. TAC is the same way. They have a similar system, Texas Association of Counties. Texas Municipal League does to some extent as well. But it's a one-stop shop, and they have a stranglehold. And like with counties and school districts, they have also the monopoly on training. Now we're trying to, come up with alternatives like TEE, Texans for Excellence in Education, is a good alternative for school board members. It's taking off. It's new. We need to scale that more. I mean, y'all are aware of the group, but still, it's a virtual monopoly. That these groups. And if you don't do your training, you can be removed from office. They threatened actually some of our elected officials in Galveston County over that wouldn't go to the taxpayer-funded lobbying training.
Just a quick comment. A PAC popped up just before the last road bond here in Montgomery County, and guess who funded the, Make Mobility Great Again, whatever it was called in Montgomery County. It was all of the engineering firms that we're going to gain all the design work from. So anyway.
All this stuff is just lobbying by a different name. It's what I mean. It's the
called
same.
the wallets and the iron train.
Right.
Right? That part of the angle.
I see it all the time in Austin, and it's the same on the local level as well. Yeah.
But
You stated that we're a Christian nation, but you don't see it. I've seen Muslims coming into city councils, making changes, making it so that call to prayers can happen. It's happening in Houston. It's happening in other parts of the state. I'm fearful for our nation and the way things are going. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done through the Attorney General's office to stop this stuff. If we were ringing the church bells at 3:00 in the morning at a Christian church, and throughout the night, the community would be in uproar. But yeah, this stuff is taking place in Texas today. I don't want us to become Dearborn, Michigan.
No, we cannot be like that. They've destroyed their state. That city. I mean, they had Arabic writing on their police badges. On their Yeah, I mean, we are a Christian nation. The preamble to the Texas Constitution says, "Humbly invoking the blessings of Almighty God." That's a prayer. So how do we combat it? Boldness in our faith and boldness in biblical values in government. We need to elect people like that. And that is why I fought. It took me 4 sessions to get it done, restoring prayer during school hours. Not before, not after, during. And Bible reading during school hours. And the AG just put out an advisory not that long ago. He wants the Lord's Prayer, right? As it should be. But not only that, the 10 Commandments. We've been fighting for that. I sent a letter to every ISD in Texas saying, follow the law. This is not an option. This is not a suggestion. Every child needs to read that. How is it harmful, by the way? They're saying it's harmful. What is it? Don't steal, don't kill, honor thy mother, thy father. don't bear false witness. Which, I mean, how are any of these things harmful to teach a child? But not only that, we need our churches to be bold too. Uh, and, we won that consent decree. It wasn't in Texas. But the Johnson Amendment, obviously was targeting Christians. I mean, Lyndon B. Johnson was a bad guy, really bad guy. He had a Baptist, I think, minister run against him and a preacher. That's why he was so anti-Christian. He ended up, of course, winning, unfortunately. But look, we need to make sure that our churches are defended in that as well. And I will. If they're trying to come after, the IRS is ever trying to come after churches for endorsing candidates that support biblical values, I will be there to defend them and intervene in those cases because we have to be. Our churches need to say, here's who supports biblical values, here is who does not. And that is how we start taking this back.
Would that be defended from school districts that, well, I'll wait and follow up on that.
Go
Larry.
ahead.
If they put up the 10 Commandments in the classroom, and we've had some directors, school board directors, that were concerned about not just being sued from the standpoint of the ISD being sued, but personally.
Yeah.
So does that extend to those?
Yes, because they're operating in their official capacity. And I made sure to put in both my bill, the Prayer and Public School Bill, and also SB 10, which I was joint author, that's the 10 Commandments bill, that the AG shall defend. Right? Everyone can see that. This isn't going to cost you any money. The AG is going to defend you when you do the right thing here and follow the law. It's there in black and white. Of course, taxpayer-funded lobbyists are lying about it. They're actually buying into what the ACLU is saying. You're going to be sued. Well, bring it on. You're going to lose. They're going to lose.
So it's codified in law now.
It's in law now. Yeah.
Paxton would
It's
defend that.
it's in law right now. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. It is in law now, and we need to continue to do that when we have legislation like this, because I don't want any excuses for not supporting biblical values in government. We're putting God back in government. That's what we're doing, because for years they have scared Christians off with this lie of separation of church and state. That is a lie. That is not in the Constitution, and it is how they throttled people from being bold in their faith. And we need to be more diligent in defeating that lie. That is nowhere in the Constitution. That was only in a letter from Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist. That's it. So I always ask them, where does it say that? And of course they can't point, they can't point it out. Can you show me which article here says that? Yeah. No, they cannot. Yeah. Yeah.
One of our questions was, what will you do to remove all gender ideology and DEI initiatives from schools and hiring it? You said that as a member of the education committee on the floor, I fought one. Would you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so that was the session. Florida has the ban on discussion of sexual orientation, gender ideology, I believe, to third grade. And I said, not good enough. Brandon Creighton's a good friend of mine. We said, let's do 12th grade. That's what we did. So all of K-12, you cannot discuss sexual orientation, gender ideology. You can't have the, gay straight alliance clubs. Remember those that they had? You can't have that. None of that. That's all gone. It's not right for kids.
Right.
They're forcing this ideology on children. And really, it's an anti-God agenda, because if you think about this, if government can tell you what sex you are, it can tell you anything. And they know that was their way to indoctrinate kids, frankly, against Christianity. And look, it was happening. But this is something that I've been leading on since day one. I authored and passed the Save Women's Sports Act to kick men out of women's college sports. Also defining male and female as biological sex, like President Trump did with his executive order back in January, put that into law. But we have to continue, because they have tried every angle. DEI, by the way, is racist, because that's saying a child is born racist based on the color of their skin, which is actually the opposite of what MLK said. We need to be judged on the content of our character and not the color of our skin. So, there's no one more racist than the left. That's what they always call me all the time. They tried to get me to resign in the second called special session. The Democrat caucus in the Senate, tried to censure me, and I was like, bring it on, go ahead. They didn't do it, of course, but we got to defeat this, because it's undermining our republic. We're a country based on merit. We're based on achievement. We're not based on equality of outcome. Quality outcome is socialism. So DEI, CRT, and gender ideology are against Texas, against our republic, against everything our founding fathers stood for and fought for.
Okay, we're at the point now. We'll take up to 5 minutes on your closing, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I appreciate y'all having me today. Thank you for taking the time. I love Montgomery County Tea Party. Way back in the day, y'all were helping me in 2017 run against a liberal incumbent. And look, I'll point this out as well.
Who was that?
Wayne Faircloth.
Okay.
You know, I'm also the only one in this AG race that knows, like you do, we have to elect more conservatives to office. We can't just be go along, get along. We can't say, well, they're my friend or they're a nice guy or gal or, we got to elect more principal conservatives to office. And that's exactly what I've done. My wife and I, Macy and I, have put our money where our mouth is. I've challenged multiple incumbents. And I helped Briscoe Kane get elected, helped Brent Money get elected, helped Brian Harrison get elected, I helped Janice Holt get elected right here. She's in East Montgomery County. The list goes on. And that's earned me a lot of opposition in Austin. There are a lot of people that hate me because of that. There are a lot of people that don't want to see me in office because they know I can't be bought or rented. And I'm doing this out of conviction, my heart. All I want to see is conservative values put into action. And I know that my name doesn't matter, right? You got to die to self in this as well, because eventually you're going to be in the composite, in the basement, like so many other elected officials where people are struggling to even remember your name. And all that matters is you leave it better than you found it. And look, because of my proven conservative record, that's why I've been endorsed by Texas Values, Texas Homeschool Coalition, Texas Eagle Forum, Moms for America, Texas Family Project, Riley Gaines, over 51 Trump-endorsed Republican state representatives and senators, and then also the majority of our state Republican executive committee, which is the grass tops of our Republican Party of Texas. I mean, that they're leading the charge. And because of that record, that's why they're supporting me in this race, because I've been in the trenches with you. We've won these victories together. And that's what really matters, is moving the ball down the field. This is not a tell me about it race or job. This is a show me. And the AG's office is nearly 4,000 employees, nearly 750 lawyers at full capacity. And that takes a lot of leadership. And this is not just, you're not just some litigator or lawyer or appellate attorney. You're setting the conservative agenda for this entire state. That's what the AG does. That's what Ken Paxton has been doing. And I think it's important to have signed the front of a paycheck in that. I think it's important to know where the buck stops when you're leading that 4,000 person agency to set the conservative agenda for Texas and fight for our great state, which includes hiring the best talent to deliver on those victories. That's leadership. And look, these 4 little ones, Macy and I are blessed with, I think y'all got a family picture there. Connor, Christian, Matthew, and Martha Ann. That's what I think about every day and what we're fighting for here, is that next generation. And look, as a 7th generation Texan, I will not give 1 inch to the left that's trying to drag our state down like New York and California. And I truly believe what Willoughby Travis said in his letter at the Alamo. At the very end, he had a PS, after this plea for help at the Alamo. Hey, come help. But at the end, he said something really important. And he said, the Lord is on our side. Well, you know what? The Lord is on our side in Texas. And the reason why that's so important is we don't have another Texas to move to. This is it. And that's why our 10th Amendment states' rights are so important. That's why federalism is there. We fix it here. The fight is here. That's how we win these things. And I will never give up in this fight. I will never quit. And I will always fight for our conservative values, our Christian values. And it doesn't mean the fight's going to be easy, but I do know that with our faith, all things are possible with God. So thank y'all for having me out today. Grateful for y'all.
Thank you.
And can you get me those examples of civil asset forfeiture you're talking about? I'd love to. Wow. Well, I would love to see how I can help there.
We're still under.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a couple of Tea Party meetings talking about civil asset forfeiture with judges of the county bringing this stuff up.
district judges and,
district
Yeah.
and county judge, not the county judge, but county law.
court at law, county court at law. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for y'all. Hey, thank you for all you do. I mean, half of the battle is showing up, and y'all are more than showing up. Y'all are sacrificing your time and your talent and your treasure to do this. So, very grateful for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you
Oh.
for coming in, for answering the questionnaire. as
Thank you.
well.
Thank
And
you.
Good luck in your campaign.
Thank you. I would love to earn y'all's support in my race. It would sure mean a lot to me because, I mean, y'all have done so much to go fight for what we believe in. And not just Montgomery County. I mean, Montgomery County Tea Party is known in the whole region. And it's inspired a lot of other Tea Parties to start, frankly, which is what we need. And some of those have been absorbed by the county parties now, which is also good because it means county parties have gotten more conservative.
Yeah,
They have.
We would dissolve
Oh.
if the Republican
Yeah.
Party would do their job.
Well, please don't dissolve. No, don't do that. Yeah, no.